Hey everybody, this is Mike, and you're watching the Real Black podcast. And today we have the honor and privilege of having a guest, Ron Hall, who's a martial artist, actor, fighter, fight choreographer, producer, writer, and director. And this coming Thursday, as we watch this, he's premiering or screening his short film Shadow Fist 3 at San Diego Comic-Con. That's going to be Thursday, July 25th, 2024. And we're going to chop it up with Ron about his career and Black actors and actresses in the Kung Fu genre of filmmaking as well. So without further ado, welcome to the stage, Mr. Ron Hall.
But boy, if you see him, we make a rock while about out.
How you doing, sir?
I'm good, Mike. Very nice to meet you. Glad to be on your show. I've been watching your podcast for years. You and Charles wax poetic about all things Black film, Black genre. So it's an honor for me to be here.
Absolutely. I know you're a veteran of the 43rd Chamber.
Yes, I am.
Can you let people know about that? And Charles Woods, you know.
Yeah,
AKA.
that was just this magnificent mecca of martial art movies. I had heard about it for years, and I was in the Army, and I was stationed in Alaska, and I was going to Fort Campbell, Kentucky. But I had a couple of extra days, so I went to New York, and I spent $400 buying me some VHSs. I think was those Johnny Ray Gaska bootlegs. And I met Charles in there, and
we don't like to use that word.
Oh, okay.
But you have the connection of the Kung Fu. You had the Kung Fu connection.
Yeah. I mean, that was that was kind of like me going to like Disneyland. I was in there, and Charles was walking me around, explaining. I was so shocked that he knew so much, because most of the guys I hung with, they knew general stuff. Like, this is Shaw Brother movie. They didn't know, like, this is Shaw Brother, directed by Run Shaw, and Chu Yuan is the producer, and Jackson So is the costume designer. But Charles was, I really found him amazing how much he knew about Kung Fu movies.
Yeah, I had a similar experience when I first met Charles, going to the 43rd Chamber in New York with the blaxploitation movies. He was the plug. He had all the movies before DVD. He had all the blaxploitation movies from the 70s that had not made it yet to home video. So and encyclopedic knowledge about that, as we all know. So, but before we get into like talking about the history of martial arts on film, let's talk about, well, first off, before we get into that, because a lot of people are not going to tune in beyond, or they're going to watch some of it, and then I'll come back to it. Thursday, July 25th, San Diego Comic-Con. What's going on there?
I'm part of the 27th annual Kung Fu Superhero Extravaganza, held by Rick Myers, who used to write for Inside Kung Fu magazine. He's an author. He's written a lot of books on martial arts. You got Frank Jing. Frank Jing used to run Tai Sing video. Okay. And then you have Preston Downey, who's That Fat Samurai on YouTube.
Okay. And you're going to show one of your films?
Yeah. Well, we're going to show some selected clips from the films. We have a panel, I think, of about 6 or 7 martial art filmmakers. I know Cynthia Rothrock is one of them. I think Eric Jacobus is one of them. And Bobby Samuels, who's the director of Shadow Fist, will be there, along with Robert Jefferson, who's the writer and co-director of Shadow Fist, and producer. He'll also be there.
Okay, awesome. Well, I wish I could be there, but I'm on the East Coast. But if you're in the San Diego or West Coast area, make sure that you check out the Comic-Con, and specifically this panel on Thursday, July 25th. Details are in the description. So now that we got that out of the way, I'm interested. You said you were in the service. Were you always into Kung Fu? I mean, how did you get interested and involved in being a movie actor?
Okay, so I like to say they come from two separate origins path, meaning that I had an interest in martial art out of necessity, and I had an interest in martial art movies because it was kind of channeled through that same being needing to know martial arts. I mean, I lived in Washington, D.C. There was a place that was like supposed to be really, ruthless and tough. I mean, these kids. You ever seen City of God?
Oh yeah, yeah.
The Brazilian movie? That
Brazilian
was my
film.
childhood. I
You grew up in
lived
a favela.
between. Excuse me?
You grew up in a favela.
What'd you say?
A favela.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
I'm just kidding.
yeah. I lived between two neighborhoods that was the guys from Children of God, meaning I would go to school and every day, man, it was just trauma. I mean, they would do stuff like, take my books, set my desk on fire, throw grass in my clothes, put dirt in my hair.
You were really bullied.
You know, I mean, it was incredible. And matter when I think back on it, I'm proud of that little guy who survived all that craziness because you would not believe the stuff that was going on. Those guys, we were in the third, fourth, fifth, sixth grade, and these guys were full-blown terrorists. Trust me when I tell you that.
Wow.
And so what happened? Go ahead.
No,
So
so
what
that's how
happened
you
was,
learn to fight.
okay, sure. What happened was all of my teachers who used to drive me home at one point or another so I could evade fighting all these guys, they all said, hey, Ronald Hall, you need to take karate. You need to take karate. But I was very skinny, uncoordinated, just had no physical dexterity. I was so horrible that they used to call me Super Sorry. Meaning all my friends, it was like a group of us. We all went to take karate. I was the worst. I couldn't do anything. I was a white belt. They had all gotten their blue belts and brown belts, and I was still struggling at the white belt level. But what happened was, I would say around when I was like maybe 11 years old, I started to just become obsessive about practicing the basics of martial arts, practicing my basic stances, my basic punches, my basic kicks. And all of a sudden I started to get a little good. And, so that was the beginning of kind of like my martial art journey. And, to fuel that, I would go see martial art movies because martial art movies were like some incredible escapism, and
Mhm.
they had, they had these characters in there that were larger than life. They were heroes and they were about self-determination and being righteous and, self-development. All these things appealed to me. So instantly I became an avid fan of martial art movies. And I would do anything, meaning that, I would do all kind of odd jobs just so I could make enough money to go see the next Kung Fu movie.
Oh, so was there like a theater or someplace that you would go to see these things, or were they on TV or?
Oh, oh man, Washington, D.C. was a mecca of Kung Fu movies. There were no less, if I thought about it, I probably could name about 10 to 15 theaters that you could go see 2 to 3 martial art movies all the time. Or you would see like a blaxploitation and 2 Kung Fu movies, 1 horror and a Kung Fu movie and a blaxploitation. There was like, movie theaters everywhere. And we used to just have a ball going. And I think at the time, I want to say it was probably like 50 cents, 75 cents.
Oh
And so
wow.
we'd make our little money, turning in those little caps from soda bottles or the bottles that we could find, or pixie sticks. You remember those? You'd get a little
Mhm.
discount for turning those back in. And man, we went to see Kung Fu movies, and I outlasted all my friends. Meaning that, we all started going as a group, but it started dwindling off the older we got. But I kept going and going and going. And there was just something about martial art movies that just struck me as it just appealed to me. I can just say, just kind of got in my bones, and I've been loving martial art movies ever since.
Awesome. So what were some of your favorites of the time?
Oh my God. Okay, here we go. Mad Monkey Kung Fu, one of my
Okay.
favorites.
Okay.
Invincible Shaolin, one of my favorites. Eagle's Claw. Oh my God. The last fight scene with are you familiar with Eagle's Claw?
I think I own that one. That I think
Man, I tell you
Tarantino
what.
talked about that.
But you'd have to be in a theater in
No,
Washington,
Avenging
D.C.
Eagle. Avenging Eagle is the one I have. Eagle's
Avenging
Claw.
Eagle. Okay, so Avenging Eagle was one of the ones I saw a little bit later because there was like an all Chinese theater that they were in subtitles. So I got in that a little bit later, kind of in my
Okay.
late teens. but generally growing up, just, because they had all those World Northern distribution things that you were trying to figure out, like, is this Shaw Brothers, or who is World Northern, or who is Shaw Brothers? But what's another Kung Fu movie? Oh, Soul Brothers of Kung Fu with Bruce Lee and Carl Scott. Just blew my mind. I mean, I could just go off, I probably could name about 50, but just the genre itself was just so inventive and creative and fun. And, as a filmmaker, that experience is the experience I want to bring to the guys who want to the generation now, because that was a whole different vibe when you went to a Kung Fu movie back in the day. It was just amazing.
Well, yeah, we'll see any movie communally was something. People didn't sit still in the theater for sure.
Oh, yeah. People weren't even quiet. I used to go to the movies to listen to the audience who was as entertaining as the movie we saw. I can remember the first time we went to an all-white theater out in the suburbs. Everybody was quiet, and me and my brother was like, "Why is everybody so quiet in here?" Because back at home, man, those people, they were like the audio commentary to the movie. I'll give an example. Do you remember Seven Blows of the Dragon with David Chang and T. Long?
I'm gonna say I do, but go ahead.
Okay. There was this music cue that would go on through the entire movie. It would go chicka chicka cha, right? Every time that cue, and mind you, in this movie, he must have did it 100 times. The whole audience went chicka chicka cha. That was crazy, man. It was just out of this world. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, I wish I had experienced that. I feel like, we're talking about late 70s, early 80s, mid 80s,
Yeah.
when Kung Fu craze kind of continued, past the death of Bruce Lee and so on and so forth. I mean, do you remember the first Kung Fu movie that you saw? Or?
Oh, yeah. Well, the first time I ever saw martial arts was I saw Marlowe on TV. My mother used to send me and my brother to bed about 6 o'clock, and we talked to about 10 o'clock. And one night we were talking, and I heard something in the living room. I was like, "What the hell is that?" Me and my brother said, "Well, let's go in there." And, so we climbed under the bed, under the tables. We see this, and all of a sudden I see this guy. He's just kicking holes in walls, and just, those whole 2 scenes of Marlowe just blew my mind. I was like, "What is this?" So it was Bruce Lee and Marlowe, and he was looking cool. He was kicking, and I had never seen anything like that. So I want to say maybe it was like about 2 or 3 years later. I had a friend named Herb, one of my best friends. His father took us to go see Fist of Fury, or The Big Boss, and Lady Kung Fu.
Okay.
We walked out of that movie theater traumatized and mind blown. Man, I mean, it was just because you remember, I don't know if you remember this, but back in the 70s, the cut of The Big Boss had that scene where they were chopping those people up on the saws, on the buzz saws. And
they cut that out?
Oh, yeah. Well, they had it back then, so I'm sure in later releases they took it out. But back then, when I saw it, and I'm telling you, I think I was like 9 years old. You saw all the buzzsaw scenes, all the blood, all the people getting killed. So I was traumatized, but I was captivated because Bruce Lee just put it down, man. It was just like, wow. I mean, he was, back then, before then, Batman was like my guy. After I walked out of that movie theater, I was like, oh, man, Bruce Lee will kick Batman's behind. And then when I figured out that Bruce Lee was Kato when they fought Batman and Robin on Batman, that really was something. Yeah.
Right. So we're talking with Ron Hall, who's part of the whose film Shadowfist 3 is going to a clip of it is going to show as he's panelist at San Diego Comic-Con this Thursday, July 25th, 2024. So what makes you want to become a filmmaker, martial artist, film star, and what leads you to being in Bloodsport 2?
Okay. I think 2 things. One thing was that I had an attraction for martial art movies, and I just wanted to experience it. I really had a love for it, and I just wanted to experience. Once I started doing it, when I started to become educated about it, and you got to think about what Bruce Lee did. What Bruce Lee did through martial art movies was Bruce Lee changed the entire world's perspective on Asian people and Asian culture. If you look at Asian culture, you can basically delineate before Bruce Lee and after Bruce Lee. Where the world, before Bruce Lee, they stereotyped Chinese as being weak and feeble and non-sexy, not muscular, flimsy, and after Bruce Lee, the entire world became obsessed with Asian culture. So that really was what, so in my mind, it was kind of like this. Oh man, do you mean if I become a martial art hero, I can inspire people to think differently about Black men? Because you remember back in the 80s, there was a lot of drugs going on, and every time you saw Black men on the news, it was kind of like everything was all negative, and just everything everything publicly was coming out about Black men used to be kind of like negative. And I thought that was kind of like an avenue to change that. And especially when I would travel around the world and do movies and meet people from other countries, they would always go, oh, I didn't know Black people were like this or like that. So that was something that attracted to me in terms of pursuing it, and like, some type of social correction through the making of martial art movies.
Well, that's interesting that you would say that, because I remember having a conversation with Mr. Woods about the Black representation in Asian-made Chinese films, that they still regarded certain stereotypes. The
Sure.
Asian-made ones, the Black actors didn't always get the best role, so to speak.
Yeah, that's happened to me myself, so I understand.
Okay, well, can you speak on that a little bit? I mean, what was
Well,
the
I had
perception when you came in the game?
wait a minute, I didn't hear the question. What'd you say?
What was the perception of Black actors when you came into the game?
Okay, in terms of martial art action, you got to remember it's really only been a handful of people. Jim Kelly, Carl Scott, Eugene Thomas, Billy Blanks, myself, Michael Jai White, probably Chuck Jeffries, Mark Hicks. It's basically been maybe 10 guys who have had an opportunity to do those type of films. So the first thing is, when you start doing those films, people treat you like you're very lucky. You're lucky to even be doing this. Then you're incidental, meaning that, maybe every factor in the film production pertaining to you may be a little bit less quality. Everybody's staying maybe in a little bit better hotel. They're getting a little bit more per diem. They're getting a little bit more resources. They're getting a little bit more time to shoot their scenes, things like that. So, and then in terms of being a martial artist, a lot of times you make martial art movies with people who don't understand what martial arts are, how to catch the action, how to prepare for the action, and they just think you're the karate guy who does karate. When in actuality, I have to determine what I'm going to do, what the other people are going to do, what I want to communicate in the action, and what I want the camera to see as a result of my movement. And a lot of times when you're working with people who just want to do a martial art movie, because for a lot of people, martial art movie is an easy come up. It's like you could probably find 500 people who made a martial art movie once and never did another one, because that was their avenue to get to someplace, as opposed to somebody who was dedicated to making martial art movies of a higher quality and better films.
Right. So in terms of marketing, they're very, very seldom. I mean, well, I'll go back one half a step. I'm not sure if you're aware, but we're working with Sam Furstenberg to restore one of his movies called Riverbend, starring
With Steve
Steve
James.
James. Yeah.
Steve was one of my mentors.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh
So
yeah, no,
I'm just curious. Can you speak about Steve and some of the challenges that he faced as someone who was always sort of like the sidekick, and then
right,
when American Ninja had an opportunity to crown a new American Ninja after Dudikoff left, he was still made the sidekick,
right,
and the perception that Black action stars don't sell well overseas.
right. So the first thing I want to say is those type of roles don't even exist anymore. So that's one way to look at it. It's like the Black sidekick is gone way of the dodo bird. You just don't see that anymore.
Okay.
Okay, and you're right. Steve James, Michael Jai White had this. Okay, Steve James has all the qualities of a leading man. Steve James had, and yet he was sidekick to, Michael Dudikoff. He's a competent guy, he did his thing. But if you compare what Michael Dudikoff brought to the screen as opposed to what Steve James brought to the screen, there really is no comparison. And yet it's how they see, it's kind of how people see Black performers. But I also have kind of like a theory is that there's a lot of power in martial arts. And I'm going to give you an example. I had an agent who was Jewish, and he would have my demo reel, and he basically would take me around and he would go to people and go, hey, Ron Hall could be the next Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he would take me around, and people would look at my demo 5 minutes and go, wow, he's incredible. He can do that. He can do this. He's that. Wow, that's amazing. He said, yeah. He said, well, let's take a small budget and make a movie with this guy. Well, black films, they don't sell. Black films, they don't sell. I was told one time that when you looked at Lethal Weapon, foreign sales, they generally had a big picture with Mel Gibson, and Danny Glover could or could not be on the cover. And if he was, he probably was small. So that was the conventional thinking back then in terms of, black performers. The way I see it is a little opposite of that. Tyler Perry has become the world's #1 independent filmmaker through an audience that Hollywood did not know existed. The black female audience. He became the #1 filmmaker in the world through the black female audience. You know what black women love? Black women love kung fu movies, martial art movies. You mean to tell me if you don't take a fine, sexy, physically fit black woman who can kick ass and throw her in a movie, that's not going to make money? Come on, Hollywood. I mean, really. I mean, or you take like somebody like Michael Jai White. Michael Jai White, he's a handsome actor, good guy, competent. He's got all the entire package. However, his career has never been like a Van Damme's career or Seagal's career, and even though times are changing now where less of those careers actually exist, Michael Jai White probably should be operating on a much higher level, depending on his skill set and what he brings to the screen. So it's really the way people think about martial art power, meaning, as my attorney said, hey, Ron, you know what? Maybe white guys are not so interested in making like black guys the superhero, and I will say this, a lot of times people bring, well, you got Wesley Snipes or Will Smith. Here's the difference between somebody like a Chuck Norris, a Van Damme, a Seagal, and somebody like a Michael Jai White. Is that, well, no, Michael Jai White did the same thing, but here's the difference. The difference is that Wesley Snipes came to the martial art game as an A-list actor. He was an A-list actor before he ever did a martial art movie. He was an actor, and not Jean-Claude. Jean-Claude came in as a martial artist. Chuck Norris had to do about 15 movies before he even got interested. So that's the different standard in terms of black performers in Hollywood doing martial art movies. I mean, like I said, here you go. Since Jim Kelly, you've had a handful of guys in the last like 40 years. Even Jim Kelly used to complain. He would go, he couldn't spend so much time being a mentor because he was looking for quality work for himself. And, same thing with Steve James. I met Steve James. If anybody used to read Inside Kung Fu magazine, there was a columnist named S.C. Dacey, and he had a relationship with Steve James. And actually, he gave my demo tape to Steve James, and Steve James called me, and we developed a relationship. We actually was trying to do a movie called Captain Midnight and Scorpion, basically like Green Hornet and Kato with black guys. We never got it off the ground, but that was something that we were trying to do. And Steve, Steve was a great guy. Like I said, Steve had all the factors of what it would take to be, I'll put it like that. Steve James was The Rock. He was The Rock. He was the 80 versions of The Rock. But yet he did not have the career as The Rock. Or you could take two people, Chuck Norris and Jim Kelly. Look at the career of Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris is making a movie as we speak.
Yeah.
Look at Jim Kelly's career. Yeah. He's in his 80s. He's making a movie as we speak. And Jim Kelly looked good. When I met Jim Kelly, he probably was like 70, and he looked fantastic. I was in a restaurant, and I saw an afro sticking over the chair in the back. I was like, that can't be Jim Kelly. I walked over there, and it was him looking like 5 years out of Enter the Dragon, even though it was like 30 years out of Enter the Dragon. And me and him, I worked with him. I was trying to do a project called Shanghai Jackson, basically Indiana Jones with martial arts. You know, he'd travel all over the world, and he would look for like martial art. You know, maybe he would meet like the Drunken Masters or the Five Deadly Venoms, and I would play his assistant. I'd be a Shaolin monk, you know, be the martial art expert that go along with him and stuff like that. But you know, again, we were never able to find support for what we were trying to do.
Right, right, which is unfortunate because I mean they leave behind such a small body of work. I mean, you've continued to make stuff, you know, at whatever scale is necessary, right?
Well, yeah, and that's in order to work. I mean, I'll give an example. You take the movie Bloodsport 2. In Bloodsport 2, there are people who worked with me that essentially have molded and shaped the martial art action genre today. You take Chad Stahelski and David Leitch, who worked with me on Bloodsport 2. They do the John Wick movies. They do, what else movie? You know, all those movies, the 8711 group. They, you know, they're the producers of those films. No way did I have an opportunity like that. And I'm not going to, this doesn't take away from their talent because they're extremely talented guys. However, they are talented guys who had an opportunity, you know, that many African Americans just don't have in the industry. I mean, I'll give you an example. There are tons of fantastic stuntmen who work in Hollywood that are incredible martial artists. They are amazing. You don't know who they are. You don't know who they are. And they are amazing, will blow your mind. You know, they're handsome, they can act, they look good, they got charisma, they got incredible martial arts skills, and you do not know who they are. So that's kind of the game, is that I didn't want to be a writer, but I understood when I was doing movies and people were making me do stupid things I didn't want to do. I said, okay, I need to learn how to tell stories. Then when I, you know, to learn how to tell stories, you're working with somebody and they're telling you, well, we only going to give you $5 to make a movie, but we want you to, the end scene to look like Ong Bak. Then I had to learn how to be a producer. So all these skills that I acquired as director, producer, were just out of a necessity to be able to do the type of films that I wanted to do. And now, you know, I'm not a young guy, I'm a little bit older, and I'm very interested in, you know, developing younger talent and putting them into stories that the Black, primarily, and like I said, I focus, a lot of times people get on me about saying, well, it should be for everybody. Look, I've been in this business for 30 years. So one thing we know is that it's not about for everybody, because if it was, we'd already have 10 people who are doing what I'm talking about. However, what I would like to do is focus my attention on creating stories with an African-American content, African-centered perspective. For example, The Last Dragon, that's really a perfectly infused African-American cultured movie with martial arts sensibilities. And today, people still love it. Because when you saw it and you're a Black person, saw it just rang true. And the truth of Black culture appealed to everybody, as opposed if you made something pretty contrived and just stuck a Black guy at the lead of it to say you got a Black martial artist in a movie.
Wow, great stories, great time. Now I got a whole list of movies I got to check out, starting with Mad Monkey Kung Fu.
Oh, please. Mad Monkey Kung Fu, to me, is arguably the best physical performance by any martial artist in a movie ever. Just that dude that was doing, he's on, you know, you could contact him, he's on Facebook. That shit was incredible. And to see it in a Washington DC audience was really a special kind of audience. It was like going to kind of like death matches in a coliseum, like people were screaming and, you know, you could barely hear the movie, and all that energy just transferred into watching, watching that film. And it's just, those times, I cherish those times the rest of my life, man. When I go home, I spend the night driving around DC, going to all those theaters that we used to go to, and just more than theaters, but they're included, and just have memories of just what we experienced back then. That, you know, while you're going, you know, it's like anything in life. You go through something you're really not thinking is special. It's kind of mundane and just common. And then when you look back on it, it's like, oh man, that was amazing. And I must tell you, man, to go to those movies, not know what you're seeing, you just see a poster, and it was just, half of them were just drawn. The title had nothing to do with the movie. You know, it'd be 10 Fingers of Death, and it'd be two women. And then you watch, you see the lobby cards. You have to walk down that long hall with the velvet rope and see those lobby cards over there, and your imagination just churning on what you're going to see. Then you watch the movie and hear all what's going on. And then after the movie, everybody outside doing their martial art. Oh man, I'm gonna do the snake style. I was the Tiger Man. And just it was just a wonderful, wonderful experience. Yeah.
We had a kid, Chucky. He saw some Bruce Lee movies, and the next week, everybody had nunchucks and stars, and we were throwing them at trees and kicking the bark off trees for the rest of the summer because of that kung fu phenomenon. But I nominate Triple Irons. That's my favorite unsung.
That's your favorite? Okay, I like that. I like that. That's David Chang T. Lung. It's actually Return of the One-Armed Swordsman. Is it
exactly?
Return?
New
One-Armed Swordsman. Actually, yeah, I like that, but I don't love it. I'll tell you, like David Chang and T. Lung, really, they just were intense, man. They had, they just had those statures that they were just like movie gods. Like I said, did you see Seven Blows of the Dragon?
No.
If you like Triple Irons, go Seven Blows of the Dragon. Really is Triple Irons on speed, because you got about 15 of those guys that were in that movie you're talking about. It's like 15 of them, and it's great. It's just a great Shaw Brother movie.
Yeah. So now it's your turn. If you're watching, you watched this far, nominate your favorite kung fu flick, blaxploitation or kung fu flick, in the comments section. Ron, it's been great. Thanks for hanging out with us on the Reelblack podcast.
Hey, thank you very much, Mike. Like I said, I love your show. The dynamic between you and Charles is just incredible. I could watch you guys talk for 10 hours. And I love the content that you bring. And I love that you highlight Black films and Black filmmakers. And what you're doing is really a very important aspect of Black culture. It really is significant, is important. And, just thank you for giving me the opportunity to come on your show. And, I look forward to talking to you sometime in the future.
Perfect.
And, folks, if you're near Comic-Con, come on out and, we'll see you at the Kung Fu Extravaganza.
Oh, yeah. And give your social handles.
Yeah. You can find me. Just look for Ron Hall Kung Fu Bro and you'll find me.
Right on. And don't forget, Patreon subscribers get the exclusive link to the 1-hour version of this interview. Check us out at patreon.com/Reelblack.